The hospital corridor was quiet in the way that meant something was wrong. Nurses moved without looking at each other. Phones rang and stopped ringing. A man sat alone near the wall with a paper cup sweating into his palm. He'd been told to wait. He did not ask how long. Across the building, a father with more money than patience stood near a glass door, staring at his reflection like it might answer him back. His daughter was inside. Her blood type was rare. Time was thinning. No one had planned for the donor to be who he was. No one had planned for recognition to arrive before gratitude. And no one had considered what happens when help comes from someone you decided long ago did not matter. By morning, one decision would be irreversible, not because of what was given, but because of who gave it. If stories that sit quietly and stay with you matter, consider staying to the end. He arrived before sunrise because that was how his days usually started. The parking lot lights were still on, washing the pavement in pale yellow. He parked farther than he needed to, partly out of habit, partly because closer spots felt like they belonged to someone else. He sat in the car for a moment after turning the engine off. His hand stayed on the wheel. When he finally moved, it was slow, careful, as if rushing might draw attention. Inside, the hospital smelled clean in a way that never felt gentle. He followed the signs without asking for help. At the desk, he gave his name once. He spelled it when asked, even though no one requested that. A clipboard was pushed toward him. He filled it out neatly, block letters, staying inside the lines. When he was finished, he returned it with both hands. "Have a seat," the nurse said. Her voice was neutral. Not kind. Not unkind. He sat. The chair was hard plastic. He shifted once, then stopped. Around him, people came and went. Shoes passed in front of him. A cart rattled by. He kept his jacket on even though the room was warm. It made him feel held together. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it quickly, then typed a short reply before turning the screen face down. He waited. Waiting was something he understood. He had done it in break rooms, in offices with peeling paint, in school hallways with his hands folded behind his back. Waiting meant keeping still so no one mistook you for a problem. Waiting meant not asking why things took as long as they did. A nurse returned and called his name. He stood immediately. She led him through a set of doors into a smaller room. He followed her instructions without comment. "Sit here, roll up your sleeve, relax your arm." He did not ask how long it would take or who the blood was for. When the needle went in, he looked away, fixing his eyes on a stain near the baseboard. "You okay?" the nurse asked. "Yes," he said. His voice came out even. The machine beside him hummed. A clear tube filled slowly, darkening as it went. He watched it for a moment, then looked away again. His jaw tightened, not from pain, but from the effort of staying present without drifting. He thought about his daughter's lunchbox sitting on the counter at home, still open. He had meant to close it before leaving. Afterward, they told him to rest. They brought him water and a small snack wrapped in plastic. He drank carefully, like spilling might be a mistake that followed him later. When they told him to wait again, he nodded and returned to the chair near the wall. Time stretched, thinned. The building woke up. Voices grew louder. Phones rang longer before being answered. He stayed where he was told. His leg bounced once, then stopped when he noticed. Across the corridor, glass doors slid open and closed. People with better posture moved through them. He did not look too long in that direction. He had learned that watching rooms you were not meant to enter only made the distance feel sharper. A man in a suit passed by, walking fast, his face tight. Someone else followed him, speaking quietly, almost running to keep up. The man did not notice the donor sitting against the wall with a paper cup sweating into his palm. The donor noticed him, though, not because of who he was, but because the air shifted slightly as he passed, like people had adjusted their breathing around him. The donor watched the floor until the footsteps faded. He checked his phone again. No new messages. He typed one anyway. Almost done. Be home soon. He did not add details. There was no reason to. A nurse approached him with a clipboard. She asked him to confirm his name again. He did. She nodded and walked away. Nothing else happened. He stayed seated, shoulders slightly forward, hands resting on his knees. He knew in a distant way that what he had given mattered. He also knew that it might never matter to anyone in the room he was not allowed to see. Both things could be true at the same time. He did not feel proud. He did not feel used. He felt steady, which was enough. When the nurse finally told him he could go, he stood slowly. The room tilted just a little, then settled. He thanked her. She smiled, distracted, already turning toward someone else. As he walked toward the exit, he passed the glass doors again. This time, they slid open. For a brief moment, he could see inside a bed, machines, a figure lying still. Someone stood nearby, their back turned. He did not stop. He did not look again. Outside, the sun had fully risen. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself, even though the air was warming. As he walked toward his car, his phone buzzed. He did not check it right away. Something had already been given. Whether it would be seen was no longer his choice. She woke before anyone told her to. That alone felt like control. The ceiling above her was white and unmarked, broken only by the slow pulse of reflected light from a monitor she could not see directly. The room was quiet in a managed way, like silence had been scheduled. Her throat felt dry. Her arm was heavy. When she tried to move her fingers, they obeyed, but not eagerly. The nurse noticed and came closer. The nurse smiled, the way people did when they were relieved, but careful not to show it too much. "You're awake," she said. The woman nodded once. It was enough. They told her things in short sentences. That the procedure had worked, that her levels were improving, that she would be monitored closely for the next few hours. She listened without interrupting, absorbing the information the same way she always did, sorting what mattered from what didn't. She did not ask how close things had been. That question never helped. When her father arrived, she knew before she saw him. The room changed. Voices softened. Movements became deliberate. He stood near the foot of the bed, his jacket still on, his phone still in his hand. He did not touch her right away. He looked at her face like he was confirming a fact he had already decided to trust. "You scared everyone," he said. "I didn't mean to," she replied. Her voice was rough but steady. He nodded. It was not forgiveness. It was relief settling into habit. They spoke briefly. He told her there had been complications. She understood what that meant without explanation. He said they had found a donor in time. He said it like a closed loop, problem to solution, no loose ends. She accepted it the same way. "Good," she said. "Then it's done." He hesitated, just enough to register. Then he agreed. "It's done." Later, when she was alone again, she let her eyes drift to the window. The glass was tinted. The city beyond it was muted, distant. She could see movement, but not detail. That felt appropriate. She'd always believed clarity came from narrowing your focus, not widening it. A nurse returned to check her vitals. The nurse asked how she was feeling. "Fine," she said. The nurse smiled again, made a note, and adjusted the IV. As she turned to leave, she added, "You're lucky. Your donor came in early." The word lucky landed strangely. Not wrong, just incomplete. "Did you meet him?" the woman asked. The nurse paused, surprised. "No, but I saw him waiting, very calm." The woman nodded. Calm was something she respected. She did not ask anything else. She rested, or tried to. Her thoughts moved in neat lines, but they kept circling the same point, not fear, not pain, but irritation. At herself, mostly. At the weakness of being here. At the dependency she hadn't planned for. When she closed her eyes, another image surfaced without permission. A conference room. Glass walls. A long table. Someone standing near the door with a delivery bag, shifting his weight like he wanted to disappear. She remembered how she had looked at him then, how quickly, how efficiently, how she had smiled at someone else while dismissing him with a sentence that sounded harmless. "Just leave it there," she had said. "You can go." Someone had laughed. Not loudly. Enough. She opened her eyes again. The memory did not hurt. That was the problem. It felt justified. Still. Later, her father returned with a doctor. They discussed numbers, timelines, recovery. She listened. corrected one assumption, asked one precise question. The doctor seemed pleased by that. Competence recognized competence. As they were leaving, her father stopped. "There's something else," he said. She waited. "The donor paperwork came through," he continued. "We'll take care of it." She studied his face. "Take care how?" He waved a hand. "Compensation, discretion, whatever's appropriate." She considered that. It made sense. That was how things worked. Gratitude became a transaction. Privacy was preserved. Everyone moved on. "What's his name?" she asked. Her father looked at her, measuring. "Does it matter?" She thought about the nurse's voice. Very calm. "Yes," she said. "I think it does." He exhaled through his nose and checked his phone, scrolling once before stopping. He read the name out loud. The sound of it pulled the memory into focus instantly. The delivery bag. The doorway. The way she hadn't bothered to learn it then. She did not react. Not outwardly. "That's him," she said after a moment. "Who?" "The man from the office," she replied. "Last year. The one everyone joked about." Her father frowned. "You're sure?" "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Not heavy, just exposed. "Well," he said finally, "that's inconvenient." She did not correct him. She felt something tighten, low and unfamiliar. Not guilt, not yet. Something closer to disruption. "Where is he now?" she asked. "He's done," her father said. "He left." She looked past him, toward the door. Toward the part of the building she hadn't seen yet. She realized then that help had already crossed the distance between them. Quietly. Without permission. And whatever she felt about it now would not change that. He had been awake for nearly 20 hours, but it did not show in the way people expected. Fatigue, for him, had always lived behind the eyes. The rest of him stayed upright, controlled, dressed for meetings even when there were none. He stood in the corridor with his phone pressed to his ear, listening more than speaking. When he did speak, it was brief. Direct. He did not raise his voice. People around him leaned in anyway. "Yes," he said. "I understand." He ended the call and slid the phone into his pocket. A doctor approached, adjusting his coat as he walked. "She's stabilizing," the doctor said. "The transfusion made the difference." The man nodded once. "Good." There were delays finding a match, the doctor added, careful. "Her blood type." "I know," the man said. "That's why we pay for readiness." The doctor accepted that and moved on. This was not the moment to argue philosophy. He entered his daughter's room again and closed the door behind him. He took off his jacket this time and draped it over the chair. That small action signaled safety to him. Temporary, but real. They spoke about recovery plans, about timelines, about how soon she could be back to work, though neither of them said the word work. It was implied. Identity did not pause for illness. When she asked about the donor, he answered with facts, not feeling. He told her they would handle it. That discretion mattered. That people did not always want to be pulled into things larger than them. "What if he does?" she asked. He looked at her then, really looked. "People like him don't," he said. It wasn't cruel. It was observational. He had built an empire on noticing patterns and trusting them. She said nothing. He took that as agreement. After leaving her room, he stopped near the nurse's station. He asked for the donor's file, not in a demanding way, in a way that assumed compliance. The file appeared. The name meant nothing to him. That was not unusual. Thousands of names passed through his world without sticking. He scanned the details quickly: age, employment, address. Nothing remarkable. No legal complications. No public ties. "Contact him," he said to his assistant over the phone. "Thank him. Offer compensation. Make sure there's a non-disclosure agreement." His assistant hesitated. "Sir, hospital policy. I'll handle the hospital," he said. "Just do your part." He ended the call and stood there for a moment, the file still open in his hand. He was not thinking about the man as a person. He was thinking about exposure, about stories, about the kind of narrative that formed when boundaries blurred. Across the corridor, a janitor pushed a cart slowly, careful not to interrupt. The man stepped aside without noticing he had done so. Space adjusted around him automatically. A nurse approached with a question about scheduling. He answered it. Another staff member thanked him for his patience. He acknowledged it with a nod. Patience, to him, was a resource, one you used to get what you wanted. When he returned to his daughter's room later, she was awake, staring at the ceiling again. "I'm going to take care of things," he told her. "You don't need to worry about it." She turned her head slightly. "What if I want to?" He paused. That was new. "You're recovering," he said. "That's your job right now." She did not argue. She closed her eyes. He watched her breathe for a few seconds longer than necessary. Then he left, pulling the door closed behind him with care. In the hallway, he checked his phone. A message from his assistant waited. "He's already gone." Left without asking for anything. Man frowned. That complicated things. Gratitude was easier to manage when it had a price. He typed back, "Find him. I want this closed." As he walked toward the elevators, he passed a window overlooking the parking lot. Cars came and went. People crossed in small, unremarkable lines. Somewhere among them was the donor, returning to a life that would not reflect what had just happened. The man did not like loose ends. He liked control. He liked knowing where things settled. This one, he could tell, would not settle easily. She asked to walk before they wanted her to. The doctor hesitated, then agreed under conditions. A nurse followed at a careful distance. The hallway felt longer than it should have. Her steps were slow, measured, but steady. She kept one hand on the rail, not because she needed it, but because it gave her something to do with the weight still sitting in her arm. They stopped near the nurse's station. Papers were exchanged. Names were checked. A clipboard passed between hands. "That's him," the nurse said quietly, pointing down the corridor. The woman followed the direction of her finger without urgency. At first, she saw only the shape of a man near the exit jacket on, shoulders slightly forward, head angled down as he adjusted something in his hands. He looked smaller than she remembered, or maybe the memory had been inflated by context. She took another step, then another. He turned just enough for his face to come into view. The recognition was immediate, not dramatic, not sharp. It arrived like a locked door swinging open without resistance. It was the man from the office. The delivery bag was gone. The doorway was gone. But the posture was the same. The way he occupied as little space as possible. The way he kept his eyes lowered, even when there was nothing in front of him to justify it. He did not see her. Her chest tightened. Not from fear or anger, but from the sudden collapse of distance. The version of him she had carried flat, forgettable, harmless, no longer held. He was here. He had been here first. He had given something she now depended on. She stopped walking. The nurse glanced back. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she said. The word came out slower than usual. She watched as he reached the door. Watched as it slid open. Watched as sunlight cut across his face for a brief second before he stepped forward. "Wait," she said. The word was quiet, but it carried. He turned. Their eyes met for the first time since the conference room. She saw the recognition register in his face. Not surprise, not relief, just understanding. He knew exactly who she was. He had known the moment he heard the name, she realized. Or maybe earlier. Maybe he had always known. He did not smile. He did not frown. His expression stayed neutral, controlled, like a hand resting flat on a table. "Yes?" he asked. She opened her mouth, closed it. The nurse shifted uncomfortably behind her. She began, then stopped. The words she had practiced in her head did not fit the space between them. Apologies felt too large. Gratitude felt inadequate. Silence felt dishonest. He waited, patient. The same patience she had ignored before. "You were the donor," she said finally. "Yes," he replied. That was all. She searched his face for accusation, for expectation. There was none. He was not waiting to be seen differently. He was only waiting to leave. "Thank you," she said. It sounded formal, distant. like something said at the end of a meeting. He nodded once. I'm glad it helped. He shifted his weight toward the door again. There's something I should say, she added. He paused. Not out of hope. Out of courtesy. She felt the nurse behind her, the hallway around her, the building holding its breath in the way buildings sometimes did when something unscripted happened inside them. I wasn't kind to you, she said. The words were plain. No defense attached. He considered that. His eyes flicked briefly to the floor, then back to her. I remember, he said. The honesty of it unsettled her more than anger would have. I'm sorry, she said. This time, the word landed closer to where it needed to. He nodded again. A fraction slower. I didn't come here for that, he said. She believed him. I know, she said. The door behind him slid open again, reacting to his proximity. He took a step backward without turning, then stopped. For what it's worth, he said, I hope you recover quickly. He turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft sound that felt final. She stood there longer than necessary. The nurse cleared her throat gently. Let's get you back to bed, the nurse said. She nodded and turned around. The hallway felt different now. Narrower, less forgiving. As they walked, she became aware of something she could not undo. Not the transfusion, not the past, but the fact that he had helped her without requiring her to become better first. Back in her room, she lay down and stared at the ceiling again. The light pulsed on, off, on. Her father arrived minutes later, already speaking. I heard you saw him, he said. Yes. And? She turned her head toward him. He didn't want anything. Her father frowned. People always want something. He didn't, she repeated. That silence settled between them, heavier than before. She realized then that recognition had already happened. Not publicly, not cleanly, but completely. And nothing about it felt resolved. The transfusion was recorded as a success. Numbers improved. Alarms stayed quiet. Notes were entered into systems that spoke to each other without anyone needing to raise their voice. By afternoon, the urgency had softened into monitoring. Relief took on a shape people could move around. The man who had donated was no longer in the building. He felt that absence before he understood it. His legs were heavier as he walked to the bus stop. Not weak, exactly just slower to respond. He sat when he could. When he stood, he did it carefully. He bought a bottle of juice from a vending machine and drank half of it before feeling steady enough to continue. At home, his daughter was at the table, drawing with a pencil that had lost its eraser. She looked up when the door opened. You're early, she said. Different shift, he replied. He hung his jacket on the chair instead of the hook. He did not correct it. She studied his face. Children noticed changes adults explained away. Are you sick? She asked. No, he said. Just tired. She nodded and went back to her drawing. He watched her for a moment longer than usual, then moved to the sink. He rinsed his cup and set it upside down to dry. The motion felt deliberate, like proof he was still capable of finishing things. Later that evening, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? He answered. A woman introduced herself, polite, professional. She thanked him for his generosity. She mentioned compensation, support, discretion. The words arrived in a practiced order. He listened without interrupting. That won't be necessary, he said when she finished. There was a pause. We insist, she said gently. I understand, he replied. But no. He ended the call before it could turn into persuasion. He set the phone down and pressed his thumb against the table, grounding himself in the solid surface. Across the city, the CEO stood in his office with the same phone in his hand, listening to the report. He refused, his assistant said. Everyone has a price, he replied. Not everyone, she said carefully. He did not like that answer. He ended the call and looked out the window. The city was moving on schedule. That comforted him. In the hospital room, his daughter lay awake, replaying the hallway scene in fragments. The man's voice, the way he had stepped back instead of forward, the ease with which he had left. Her father entered and sat. We'll resolve this, he said. She did not respond. What do you want to do? He asked after a moment. She turned her head. I don't want him turned into a problem. He considered that. Visibility creates problems. So does erasing people, she said. That surprised him. The next morning she was cleared to leave her room for short walks. She passed the donor wing deliberately, though there was nothing to see. She stopped near the chairs by the wall. One of them still held a faint ring from a sweating cup. She sat. A child down the hall was speaking too loudly. A parent shushed them. The sound carried. When someone helps you, the child said, you say thank you where everyone can hear. No one responded. The moment passed, but it stayed with her. By afternoon, an internal memo had circulated. The donor's name was now part of a discussion it had never been meant to enter. Legal weighed risk. Communications weighed narrative. The CEO weighed control. The man felt the shift before he saw it. A message from his supervisor asking him to come in early. A look held half a second too long. A change in tone. He showed up anyway. He always did. By the end of the day, something had changed. Not loudly, not officially. But gratitude, he understood now, was never free. It asked for space. It asked for attention. And attention, once given, could not be taken back cleanly. He picked up his daughter from school and held her hand a little longer than usual as they crossed the street. Why are you tired? She asked again. Because I gave something away, he said. She thought about that. Then she said simply, did it help? Yes, he said. Then it was worth it, she replied. He did not answer. He kept walking. She was discharged 2 days later. Not released, discharged. The word implied order, completion. Her father insisted on a car instead of the driver. He wanted the time. He drove carefully, both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. They did not speak at first. The city passed in familiar segments. Glass. Concrete. People moving with purpose they believed in. She watched it without comment, aware of how close she had come to not seeing any of it again. He refused the offer, her father said eventually. I know. You spoke to him once, he said. That doesn't mean you understand him. She did not answer right away. She watched a man on the sidewalk adjust a child's backpack strap, then hurry on. I understand what I did, she said. That's not the same thing. No, she agreed. But it's the part that matters. At home, she moved slowly through rooms she had designed to feel effortless. Everything worked. Everything responded. That had always been the point. Now the smoothness felt exposed, like something important had been sanded down too far. She sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop, closed it again. The habit of productivity rose and fell without finding purchase. Instead, she searched the donor's name. Public records. Employment listings. A small apartment building. A photo from a school fundraiser years ago. Him standing beside a child, both of them squinting in the sun. She closed the browser. Later that evening, she called the hospital. Asked about policies, about donors, about what could be said and where. Her father listened from the doorway. This isn't your responsibility, he said. It became mine when I saw him, she replied. He stepped inside. Responsibility isn't claimed, it's assigned. She looked at him. That's one way. The next morning she returned to the office for a brief appearance. No meetings. No announcements. Just presence. People stood when she entered. Applause started, then faded into something awkward. She nodded once. Sat. Opened a folder. At the end of the hour she cleared her throat. Before we move on, she said, there's something I want to address. Her father, watching remotely, leaned forward. She spoke plainly. About the transfusion. About the donor. She said his name. She did not describe him. She did not elevate him. She stated facts. He asked for nothing, she said, and he will receive nothing in return from this company. That's his choice, but he will not be erased. The room stayed quiet. This is not a story, she continued. It's a record. Someone shifted in their seat. A phone buzzed and was silenced. When she finished, she stood and left. No questions were taken. The The consequences arrived quickly. Calls, messages, legal warnings phrased as concern. Her father called that evening. "You made this public," he said. "I made it accurate. You cost us control." She thought of the hallway, the sliding door. "Yes," she said, "I did." Across town, the man heard about it from a coworker who said his name carefully, like it might bruise. "They mentioned you," the coworker said. "In a meeting." He nodded. "Okay, that's it," the coworker asked. "Yes," he replied. At home, his daughter watched him fold laundry slower than usual. "Did something bad happen?" she asked. "No," he said. Then, after a moment, "Something different." She accepted that and handed him a sock. The city adjusted, slightly, enough to be felt. Owing had taken on a shape now. Not money, not silence, visibility. The calls did not stop. They came in waves, some measured, some sharp. Advisors spoke in careful language about precedent and exposure. Legal counsel framed concern as protection. Communications asked for alignment. No one accused her directly. They did not need to. The pressure arrived through implication. She listened. She responded when necessary. She did not reverse herself. Her father asked her to come by his office. It was late. The building was mostly empty. Lights remained on in rooms that no longer held people. He stood when she entered, then sat again. The space between them felt unfamiliar. "You forced my hand," he said. "I told the truth," she replied. "Truth is not neutral," he said. "It moves things." "So does silence," she said. He leaned back. "This didn't have to be public." "It already was," she said, "just not evenly." He watched her for a long moment. "You're changing the rules. I'm naming them." He shook his head once. "This will follow you." "I know." The cost arrived the next morning. A board member resigned quietly. An investor delayed a decision. An internal memo reframed her role, narrowing it. Nothing was said out loud, but her authority thinned. Not removed, adjusted. She noticed it in small things. Meetings she was no longer copied on. A decision made without her input. Respect didn't vanish it, redistributed. She did not protest. Across the city, the man felt the attention settle around him like dust. Not heavy, just present. People looked at him differently. Some with curiosity, some with curiosity, a few with something close to admiration, though it made him uncomfortable. His supervisor called him in. "We're restructuring," the supervisor said. "Your position is changing." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means a different schedule," the supervisor replied. "Different responsibilities." He nodded. "Will it pay less?" "Yes." He considered that. "Okay." The supervisor hesitated. "You could talk to someone. Make this a thing." "I don't want it to be a thing," he said. That was the end of the conversation. He told his daughter at dinner. "Will we have to move?" she asked. "No," he said. "Will you still be tired?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "Probably." She thought about that. Then she said, "People should help you back." He looked at her. "Sometimes they don't." She accepted that without argument. The woman watched the news segment, alone in her apartment. Her name appeared. Then his, briefly. No image, just context. She turned the television off before it finished. Later, she walked without security for the first time in years. She blended in more than she expected. The city did not pause for her. That felt appropriate. Something had been lost. Control, distance, a version of herself that believed acknowledgement could stay private. Something else had taken its place. The cost had been paid. The morning routine changed first. Not dramatically. No alarms shifted. No calendars cleared. But the man no longer waited in his car before work. He turned the engine off and got out immediately, even when the lot was full. He walked the shorter path now, past the closer spaces, past people who did not move aside. At home, the lunchbox was always closed before he left. His daughter noticed. She did not comment. She noticed other things, too. That he sat at the table while she ate instead of standing by the sink. That he rested his hand on the back of her chair when he passed. not as a check, just as contact. On his new schedule, he came home earlier. The pay was less. The hours were quieter. He adjusted. He always had. One afternoon, he stopped at the same vending machine near the bus stop. He bought juice again, out of habit. This time, he drank all of it without sitting down. Across the city, the woman moved through her days with fewer buffers. Meetings were shorter. Some invitations stopped coming. Others arrived later than they used to. She learned which voices still carried weight and which ones no longer needed to. She did not ask for clarification. She drove herself most mornings. Sometimes she walked the last few blocks. People passed her without recognition. That felt earned. At work, she no longer spoke first. She listened longer than before. When she did speak, it was precise, not corrective, not performative. Once, in a meeting, someone referred to the transfusion as a story. She corrected them. "It isn't," she said. "It already happened." No one argued. She did not reach out to the donor again, not because she didn't think of him, but because she understood now that proximity was not the same as repair. Some lines, once crossed, could not be redrawn without doing more harm. Instead, she changed smaller things. Policy language, access points, who was allowed to wait and where. The hospital chairs by the wall were replaced a month later. New ones, padded, easy to clean. On a Saturday, the man took his daughter to the park. They sat on a bench and watched people move past. She ate a snack and dropped crumbs without worry. "Did you ever see her again?" she asked suddenly. "No," he said. "Do you want to?" He thought about that, about the hallway, the door, the way she had said his name. "No," he said finally. She nodded. "Okay." They stayed a while longer. When they left, he held her hand loosely, not pulling, not guiding, just there. That evening, he folded laundry at the table. Slower than before, careful. The socks matched. The shirts were stacked evenly. His phone buzzed once. A message from an unfamiliar number. "Just wanted you to know my daughter is well. I won't contact you again. Thank you for what you gave." He read it. He did not reply. He set the phone face down and finished folding. Across town, the woman stood alone in her kitchen, watching the kettle heat. It clicked off. She poured the water and waited for the tea to steep, counting without checking the clock. Outside, traffic moved. People crossed streets. Someone waited for a bus without looking at their phone. She thought of the man sitting against the wall with a paper cup in his hand, of how she had seen him only after he was already leaving. The kettle cooled. The tea darkened. She drank it without adding anything. The world had not balanced itself. It rarely did. But something had shifted, and it stayed that way.